Okay, so let's get it started. First of all, thank you for coming, all of you. I was not expecting so many people, to be honest. As you know, I am going to talk about testing tools in Alfresco and another best practices for full life cycle development. Okay, so my name is Fran Alvarez. I come from Zaizi, from the office that we have in Spain, so I am the director. And if I had to use some word to define myself, that would be ECM, because I've been working with Alfresco for 5 years. Information retrieval, testing, of course, and semantic technologies as well. You have my contact details in there in case you need something, okay? Okay, before starting, you know, I'm not trying to make this presentation too technical. That's not my objective, but I have a strong technical background, so in case I say something very technical and you don't catch it, just raise your hand. I'll try to explain it better, okay? So let's go to the index, all the things that we are going to talk. First of all, we are going to talk about the testing concept, okay, because, you know, testing is something that almost anyone likes it. I'm going to explain why it's important and all this stuff. Then we are going to talk about the main part, which is the stack that we have built in order to assure the quality and the continuous quality assurance automatically, okay? The challenge that we need to cover, the ecosystem that we set, some automated continuous testing, and of course, some advices and the evolution. And last, if we get time, okay, we are going to talk a bit about test-driven development in Alfresco, which is a development technique. And finally, the conclusion of this presentation. Okay, so, you know, I come from Spain. I'm pretty bad defining concepts in English. So I use my friend Wikipedia to describe what is a test. And according to Wikipedia, a test is an assessment intending to measure a test taker knowledge, skill, aptitude, physical fitness, or classification in many other topics. So, you know, a test is what we know it is. You know, you study and you need to pass by marking some correct answers. But it's also a physical test. You know, there are plenty of kind of tests. I want to remark 3 words, okay? We will go through them later, but assessment, measure, and test taker knowledge, okay? Which is the basis of what a test is. But let's focus in software. I am not going to read it, okay? You can read it if you want. So I want to remark 2 words, or 3 in that case. Quality and product or service, okay? So testing means quality, okay? So how can you know that your code, that your application has quality? By testing, okay? And if you remember, I marked 3 concepts. So what's the measurement in software testing? Or what do we measure? It's also known as metrics. And by metrics, we can see that there are several. So, for example, how well our code is, how well coded our code is, how good our tests are, how performant is the code that we have, so how fast is when he has massive request, and of course how well the requirements are met, because if your code is awesome but does not meet the requirement of your customer, it's shit, okay? The assessment, or how do we measure, there are different ways depending on the kind of test that we have. For instance, JUnit tests, we need that all the JUnit tests pass, otherwise we cannot deliver the release. Our test taker is basically Alfresco. I've included a screenshot of Share because, you know, Share is the most common interface used in Alfresco. But actually, what we test is the knowledge of the test taker. the code, mostly, okay? You probably know that the fact of testing in computer engineering is not well seen, so people does not like too much. But it's important, you know, because if we compare with other disciplines in life, testing means that this building where we are now attending is not going to fall down, okay? Or the plane that brought us to Berlin is not going to fall down. Or the food that we ate yesterday and we are going to eat today, hopefully, is not going to cause us any pain. So, you know, I expect that I convince you yet that testing is important. Okay, but important does not mean that the testing is easy, okay? Because, for example, in 5.6, we know that the environment that we are using to test is always the same. I mean, Newton's law, for instance, are Newton's law, and they are not going to change. Okay, if you want to talk about relativity and those complex things, it's okay, but I don't get it. So what I mean is, you know, it's important, but in other areas, testing environment is more stable. In software engineering, what we can have some, you know, cases like, for example, that we run the test twice with the same data, but the results are different because we are running code in 2 different threads. We are expecting that thread A finish before thread B, but happens the opposite. So the outcome is different than you were expecting. And how do you control that, you know? And of course, integration is something that we have to do always. And what happens if the third party changes and you don't know? Or what happens if the third party that you are integrating with switch off? Okay, so it's complicated. And of course, the fact that, you know, you build a skyscraper and the skyscraper remains as it is, but code changes after it's being deployed in production. So it's complicated. And not only in a technical wise, but also in a business way. You know, I'm sure in your company there are no guys like that, but in other companies we have the typical account manager who says, okay, the project is not, we don't have profit in the project, so get rid of testing. So that way we have margin for the profit of the project, okay? So the things that we are going to talk about now has been possible thanks to a very well union, which is between our customer and our company. Okay, I will explain a bit later about the main areas of this project, but we have a guy in this room which is from the customer. I want him to raise his hand, okay? So part of the fact that I am here in this session speaking to you is thanks to him. So later we will give them a hand, okay? But just later, you know. Okay, you know, when I say Zaizi, I mean not only the company, you know, we invest in, you know, we don't have such guys in our company. But also, you know, the team believes in what they were coding, they were doing, and if they don't believe that testing is important, we could have not succeeded. Okay, so the challenging scenario, what was? Okay, basically, we have this philosopher, Velociraptor, who is thinking, how do I test several releases in parallel with huge functionality? It happened the same to us. Okay, we have a scenario with a lot of features, a long duration project with a lot of people. So imagine, if we are good, because I see, you know, we are the best, and we have a long duration project with a lot of people in the project, the functionality that we had on it was huge. In fact, we have APIs, behaviors, out-of-the-box customization, permission customization, third-party integration, a lot of stuff that we need to test. As I said, we have, for example, 3 releases in parallel. So We were testing A, B, and C at the same time. Requirement, we have a requirement in A, we change it in B, but we revert back in A. So how do you control that? You know, it's complicated. That's the reason why we create the Zaizi testing ecosystem under the statement that coding does not end within the code. What does that mean? It means that when we finish the code, we write some additional code for testing the code itself, okay? And that's very much the ecosystem that we are using by integrating so many features, okay? You know, the bottom layers are close to the server itself, the top are close to the user, to the final user. That ecosystem allows us to perform so many operations within the code. For example, we can perform unit tests for every piece of code. We can mock, we can emulate third parties or subsystems. We can create reports for code covering and code health. We can create AP harnesses. We can test how well our code responds to massive requests, you know, by creating functional tests. And we can emulate users doing the operation that the user would do. So we have functional tests that we can validate automatically. Now I'm going to describe a bit, because we don't have too much time, every component that we have in this diagram. Okay, we have Maven. I think that in our ecosystem, Maven are the foundations because it allows us to build on the top several stuff, okay? You know, we use Maven for full lifecycle management, but it's not the purpose of this talk, talking about that. But the testing-wise part of Maven is that we can integrate some useful plugins in Maven, and we have covered those areas of testing, okay? I will go on them later, but we have integration with Surefire, Cobertura, and Sonar. We have JUnit. You probably know JUnit. Is anyone not working with JUnit? Okay. In that case, it's an open source Java library for unit purpose, unit test purpose, okay? And thanks to the Maven Surefire integration, we can create a virtual Alfresco context, okay? We don't need to start up an application server, but we have all the context of Alfresco, the database, the foundation service, the web script, everything that is in Alfresco SDK, actually, we have it. And we can have clean runs every time because we wipe the database every time we run the test. So I can run the test so many times that I want that automatically wipe the database, and we work with zero items in the repository. And in terms of assessment, we don't generate our release if some test fails, okay? Because we need to make sure that we have not broken anything. So it's part of our regression testing, okay? We also have Mockito. That's maybe less known, but it's another Java library for emulating third parties, okay? Because when we're integrating with third parties, we are expecting that third parties work. So what we do is emulate the behavior of this component and test only the integration. And as I say, it's very useful to isolate our code because we only test what is our, you know. Okay, next one. We have Sonar, which is an open source code quality platform, which allows us to perform several code quality criteria, but we use it in 2-3 different ways, okay? Basically, this is another plugin of Maven. So using a Maven command, we run operation that writes, execute some code analytics, post the data into the Sonar database. We use that for check how complex our code is, the cyclomatic complexity. Check the style of the code, check if everyone codes under the same names criteria, variables name, methods name, class names. As an alternative for Cobertura, which is another plugin that we are going to talk, we can use it for code coverage, or how much percentage of code is covered by the unit test. Okay. Next item is Cobertura, which is what I've just said. Okay, code coverage. We have all the packages. The green side is the code that is covered by our test. The red is the one that is not. So what's the ideal? The ideal thing is that everything is in green, but it's quite complicated. We usually establish a deadline of 70%, so if we don't get that number, we need to write up more tests in order to make it. For instance, that would be an overall report of Cobertura. We have line coverage, which is how many lines our unit code is covering. So if we have a class that has 100 lines and 70 of them are covered, we have 70% of line coverage. Branch coverage is a different concept. Is if we have two possible paths from our code can go, that would be two branches. Okay, so in that case we have 55, which is not acceptable. So in that case we need to code more. Okay, we've said before that JMeter was the foundation. So that Maven was the foundation. So for me, JMeter is the central axis. It's the one that allows us to perform a lot of operations. JMeter is an Apache project that allows to run services automatically of so many protocols. For example, HTTP. So in Alfresco, we can test webscript, CMIS. Okay, we can test SMTP. So we can, test emails into Alfresco. And we use JMeter for several kinds of tests. We create API harnesses. I will go through it now. We emulate users so we can create functional tests. Okay, and we run performance tests as well for see how robust is our code. That would be a screenshot of JMeter. Who has ever worked with JMeter in the room? Okay. Start with Cypher. Okay. Well, basically, you have in the left column the operation that you run, and in this view, which is the view result tree, we can see all the operation that we've been running with JMeter. We've been talking before about test harness purposes. What's that? Okay. Basically, in a software-oriented architecture, we create APIs that can be consumed for any other third party. So this API is basically a catalog of operations with some inputs and some outputs. Okay? So it's not acceptable that you test the base case in your system and you have the statement that is working. You need to test every possible input and every possible output. So we create with JMeter a catalog of operations where we have, for every service, all the possible incomes and outcomes. What it helps us to two different things. For one side, we check if our code keeps working. It's basically, instead of testing manually the API, you run a command, and the command execute everything. But for a technical view, we have the API documented. Okay, so we have how do we have to call every services, what is the input that we can send, and what is the output that we are expecting from that input. I'm going to do a quick demo. Yeah, we have time. Okay. It's not a very complicated API, okay? Basically, it's a CRUD, create, retrieve, update, delete, of documents in Alfresco, okay? We have in there all the configuration that we can apply, so we made the test suite configurable. We have the pretest set up, okay? Because, for instance, if we are going to create a document, we need a folder that contains the document. And we have the results view where we have the outcome of this test. Okay, so I run it. Okay, I mean, it's not too complicated. It's create content, update content, delete content, search content, and versions content. Okay, so in here we have all the operation that we have done to Alfresco. Okay, for instance. We have this one. We have created a content using Node.ref. That's the request that we have used. It's a post method, okay? And a service called Alfresco/s or service/Zaizi/document create, okay? And that's the response, which is that a new document has been created. Okay, but we don't only test the good cases, okay? I mean, in APIs, we have to control exceptions as well. So, for instance, if we try to create a content into a not existent location, we are expecting an error, an exception with a code request from the HTTP method of bad request. Okay, so that's the reason why if we go to create content into an existing location, the response is a code 400, which is bad request. Okay, that way we make sure that the things that should not be working are well done as well. Okay. I don't want to extend too much in that, but you know, it's pretty cool. Okay. We also use JMeter for functional test purposes, okay? So, for example, if we need to test, I don't know, an user sends an email into Alfresco and you are expecting that the email is placed in the folder of the user, the to user. Okay, so what we would do, we would emulate the user and we will send an email to Alfresco. We look the folder of the user that we put in the to recipient, and the document should be there, there. That's pretty much the functional test. So, every time that we release a new version of our code, we run all the functional tests to make sure that we have not broken anything, okay? Because unit test is okay, but unit test does not have an actual application context. So we can have, or we could have that unit tests are working, but functional tests no. So we have an extra level of quality assurance. Finally, we use JMeter for performance tests, which is, I'm sure, pretty much the way that you guys usually use JMeter for. Because, let me get back to JMeter. We can tell JMeter that the operation that we are doing run forever, okay? So in that case, we will have running the test again and again and again. Okay, you see that keeps working. Very fast, by the way. Okay. Okay. We also use Confluence, okay, which is a product of the Atlassian ecosystem. You know, if you know Jira, Jira is a ticketing system. Confluence is the wiki, and we use basically for uploading the reports that we created with the other tools. We have a summary report in there where we see that 92 of the functional tests were working in the last release. And we can have reports for every piece of, or for every operation. Okay. We also use AppDynamics, which is an application for monitoring the performance of the application. It's pretty cool and it's pretty extended. I mean, you can do a lot of things with it. Actually, we could create a different talk for that purposes, maybe next year, okay? But the main things that we can do with it is we can detect slow transaction. We can check what are the methods that are slower in order to, detect memory leaks or code not very well built. I'm not going to talk too much about this one, but I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots. Okay, the screenshot of the bottom is the communication between the database and the server, so we can see if we are overloading the database. Okay, I don't know if it is something, but in that case, is only we are only using 2.5% of our time in database, which is fine. Now we can have another report for checking the whole stack of a service call and see what are the methods that takes more time or 2 times for being run, so we can detect the slower method or the slowest piece of code. And that's a ranking of the slowest calls. So we can see easily which are the methods that we would need to refactor in order to improve the performance. We use AppDynamics in combination of JMeter, so we run the performance test with JMeter. We run the same elements again and again and again for a period of time, and then we check AppDynamics to see what we have in the application. Okay, everything, all the technologies that I've explained before, we have not only merged in an ecosystem, but we have also created an algorithm for automatic continuous testing. Okay, so we can run all that we have been saying without human involvement. Okay, so we have a dedicated server for testing purpose, thanks to the customer. We make this suite of tests repeatable because we can repeat the test again and again and again. Robust, because we are sure that if we repeat the test 2 times without code change, we are going to have the same output. And auditable, because we can track all the times that we have been doing the test, so we can see when something changed and all this stuff. So we only get the human involvement when something went wrong. That's the reason why we left to be monkeys, okay? You know, engineers are in some manners creative. So at least for my point of view, I don't want to be pushing buttons like a monkey. I prefer creating stuff. Okay, so not anymore. Although we have some guys that have pretty much this face in the company, you know. And this is the algorithm. Okay, yeah, we can see it. Okay. basically, we have 3 different ways to finish it. But first thing, we apply some configurations in case something has changed in the server, some permission stuff the most. We stop the server in case it was up, okay, and we check out the latest code from the SVN, so we are sure that we are testing the last committed code. And we build the release with Maven. When we build the release, we run the JUnit test, and after we use the Maven plugin of Sonar for code coverage and all this report that I explained below. So if we got more than at least one fail in the JUnit test, the release is not valid. We report that the release is invalid, and we stop the server. In that case, the server has not started up, but it's part of the algorithm. If it went okay, we export the test covering results, and later we deploy the release, okay? And we start the server. If the server went okay, it started, the application context was okay and all this stuff, we go to the good one part. If not, we report that the release was invalid. So if the server started up okay, we run the functional test report. Imagine how much functional tests we have, that this operation takes about 90 minutes. Okay, so we run a lot of functional tests. We export the results, and we stop the server. So imagine we can run this algorithm as many times as we want. Actually, we do it at least one time every day. We have several advantages with that we will see later. But that's an advice. Don't become a test addict, okay? Because when you started to test and you see that it's cool, you are going to test everything. Even you are going to want to test the test that you create for testing the original code, okay? But chill out and test only what you need. So leverage your code with testing, but not the opposite, okay? Because I can say, oh, I am the best tester in the world. I've created 1 million of unit tests, but if you only needed 10, you're stupid, Okay, so as software as everything, we are evolutioning this ecosystem. Okay, we are now investing in 2 areas that we think we need to improve. One of them is making functional tests more functional. I will explain you now. And then detecting some behaviors within the log files, within the Alfresco log files, or even our logs file that we have built, okay? For that one, we are using Splunk, okay? Splunk is a tool that allows to monitor logs of everything and detect some anomalies, some behaviors. Okay, I'm not going to say any more about Splunk because then one of my colleagues is going to have a lightning talk about that. I want to keep it as a surprise, okay? That's the reason why I say, would you like to know more? You should want to know more, okay, because it's pretty cool. We are including right now Selenium, okay, which is a tool for functional test purposes. Okay, we saw before that with JMeter we can run APIs operation, but the problem is that JMeter is not very good with asynchronous code, and share is pretty much Ajax, JavaScript, and we don't get good results by using JMeter with share. So for user interface in share purposes, we are using Selenium. Okay. I don't know what time is it, but well, yeah. I'm going to talk a bit about TDD in Alfresco, okay? which is a technique of software development. It's pretty easy to understand, okay? Basically, by running short cycles of coding, the first thing that we do is we write a test without writing the original code, the code that covers the requirement. So we run the test, and obviously it's going to fail, okay? The next step is we create the code that make that test to pass, okay? So when the next time that we run the test is green, the test is okay. And then we refactor the code in order, apply some code style, merging duplicated code, applying patterns. Okay, all this in a cycle time. Okay, I said 15 minutes, but can be more flexible. Okay, that's possible because of the integration of Maven, Surefire, and Alfresco. So we can start the virtual context, the virtual Alfresco context, and we can run tests and tests again and again, and the virtual database that I explained you before. With TDD, we have some benefits. Okay, first of all, you focus on delivering. You not become crazy by creating. You have to define a service, and you say, oh, I'm going to write up a service which is going to allow me to fly to the moon. But if you don't need to fly to the moon, why are you writing that? Okay, so you only code what you need to deliver. As you code like that, you have that test as part of the documentation, because you can check the test and you can see what you want to do with your code. So if you don't know how a piece of code works, you go to its test and you can see very easily how it works. Thanks to Surefire integration, again, we can debug without starting up a context. And it's proved that people who code under that technique found or creates a less number of defects. But we have also another inconvenience. For example, tests are slow because every time that we run the test, we have to start the Alfresco context again and again. I'm going to show you that it takes a bit of time. And of course, it's not prepared to test UI yet. Okay. Oh man, I think my microphone was not working. No? Okay. Whoa. Okay, I think I have time to create a tiny test about TDD. Okay. I think you can, well, it's okay. It's okay. We have a test of a thing that we created in the past for gamification into Alfresco. Okay, so we have a test that create a thing, an entity that we've called achievement. Basically, we create a site. Inside a site, we create an achievement. Okay, and we are expecting that the achievement that we have created is not null. Okay, but the original code, I mean, without coding anything, it's like that, return null. So if we run the test, okay, we are starting up the Alfresco context right now. Okay. Realize that an icon of OpenOffice is going to appear into my doc because we also start up the OpenOffice subsystem in case that we need to test some transformation or some indexation or something. Okay, this is like the first time that we run Alfresco. We are creating the database tables. As I told you, it takes a bit. So that's 15 minutes cycles maybe become to 30 minutes. Okay, it's finishing. Oh. The code was so bad that my computer exploded. Now, we have one test run, one failure, okay? Because we didn't have code. So believe me, if I tell you that this line creates an actual achievement, okay? So if I run it again, we are not going to wait for it anyway. Well, let's wait. Because I need you guys believe me, okay? So yeah, you can see pretty much this is similar code that when application server, a Tomcat JBoss, is starting up, okay? We are using MySQL for this, but we can use another database system management, okay? Have you seen like OpenOffice startup? Okay, so if every build successful, run one test, 0 failures. Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of saving, because we created everything for cost savings, not because we are freak, okay? So we have time saving, of course, because we reduce the development cycle, okay? Testing is part of development cycle, but testing for us is automatic. So that piece of work is made by a monkey, by a computer, not by a human, okay? Because imagine the case that we have validation of the code that could take more than 3 hours for testing the whole functionality, and we have at least one release per week, and the project duration is more than 2 years, so too much time, okay? And of course, moral saving, because when we are tester and we are testing the same again and again and again, it's frustrating. Your work is not as cool as you want to be. And of course, we are human, we tend to mistake, so we don't test the very same twice. What does that mean? That I test something, but I believe that it should be working in a different way. So I see it working, I say, oh, this is not working. But it is. It's just that I block mine or something. And we lose time in this relation management, okay? So in effective, we are cost-effective testing. I mean, a human only tests when something went wrong in the automatic test. So we can say that, yeah, we have a life again, okay? We don't need to spend 3 hours a day by testing. My conclusions is that testing is the best QA indicator, that not comfort yourself with the unit test. Don't think that for the fact that you have unit tests in your system is working well. Don't become crazy testing those. Okay, and define a stack that can meet your customer requirement. Okay, I mean, this stack worked for us, but maybe for you it's not going to work as well as ours. So design what you want to include in your testing stack and apply it. Okay, last, I would like to say thank you to the customer staff. Okay, now it's time to Michael Fan to stand up. And a clap. Okay, he's the technical architect, and as I said, he's guilty of the fact that we have built of this. We have also James Bennett, which is the head of QA and the guy that stopped testing as much, and the project manager, Ian Carr. And of course, my awesome team, okay, my awesome people, who have made that happen. Okay, now it's time. If you have any question, go ahead.
Yeah, not so much question, but comment. First of all, really good presentation, and you are doing the right things. About, how should I say, for your next version of your ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, So about the testing ecosystem, so for 3.0, first of all, I suggest that ditch JMeter, and there are a few good reasons. First of all, every time you do a JMeter test, you need to start the GUI, which means that it's not so developer-friendly. There are better tools which actually create really human-readable test descriptions, like Gatling. So it's fits much better with the developer workflow, and also versions much better in a version control. So that's something that is worthwhile to check. And the transition from JMeter is really small. Another suggestion and idea is to look a little bit higher level testing frameworks, like robot framework. You are now moving from JMeter to Selenium.
No, not moving.
But
we are living with both.
Yeah, so you have two different frameworks. These higher level testing frameworks, like robot framework, actually provide like top level harness, which actually runs then these lower level testing frameworks. And the benefit from using this higher level framework is that with the customer, you can actually define the requirements and the use cases in human readable form. And that human readable form is then run with Selenium, JMeter, Gatling, and other testing frameworks. Yeah. So based on what you just told us, you are already moving to that direction, and that tool can actually help and save lots of time from your next versions.
It's really appreciated because, we are going to be evolutioning that. But this is what I told you, that every company will create his own stack, and the one that we have so far is perfectly fit in the way that we have for working with our customer. But of course, we are going to
it's natural steps in the evolution. I've seen in a couple of customer cases the same evolution, and I wanted to say that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. People have already done that, and you can save a lot of time and money with that. So really good presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? When nobody raises hand, it's because everything is clear or nothing. So I expect the first thing. In that case, thank you for attending. I hope that you have learned a bit and not get too much bored. And that's it. Okay?